So you've run away from a toxic situation with a covert narcissist or an overt narcissist who has in some way, shape, or form attacked you either verbally or physically. You've run away now and you've gone no contact. Good for you. Yes, you're hiding away. But there's a piece of you maybe that's wondering, when can you reunite? When can you talk about your differences? When can you come back together and give it another shot, give it another try, and make it better? How about never? My name is Kevin, and this is The Royal We. Couple of issues right off the bat with wondering when you can reunite with a toxic individual. Number one, right off the bat, is why are you even in waiting? You are stopping your life from progressing and moving forward and becoming the person that you as an individual are called to be while you are in your heart and in your mind thinking and contemplating on how to reunite with a toxic, nasty, abusive situation. So right there is your biggest indication and answer as to why you have got to get it set in your mind and in your heart, however possible, that it is not going to happen. You are not going to go back to that relationship. Now, even if there were ever to be some kind of reconciliation, it still would not bring the relationship back to what it could have been. The relationship after narcissistic abuse is forever changed. And there is not going any back. Not now, not ever. And so what is there to go back for? Now, in my own personal journey, I have been no contact for 5 years. And now I'm saying this because a lot of people watching this video, maybe you who are watching right now, you've gone no contact now for 6 weeks, maybe 6 months, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've communicated with them, and I wonder, are we going to talk again? Get it out of your mind, get it out of your heart. It's a stumbling block keeping you away from your purpose in life. And this is what narcissists are. They are stumbling blocks here to trip you up and to stop you from living and being your true, authentic self. Now, I shared a story in a previous video about the greatest king ever written about in history, King David, from the ancient literature of the Old Testament of the Bible. Now, David was a young man when he took out Goliath, and he became world renowned for taking out Goliath, facing the giant in his life and taking him out. And he did this in service of King Saul, because David was not yet the king. And David loved King Saul. Not only did he take out the giant, but it is written that David would sit and play music for Saul. He served him. He loved him. He adored him. He said, "You are my king." And for some reason, Saul became filled with embittered narcissistic rage and hate towards the very one who loved and served him and played music for him and also slayed the giant for him. Saul was enraged and blew up in narcissistic rage, and young David ran, and he hid, and he went no contact, and he stayed away from Saul. And the question is how long was David away? How long was he running? How long was he hiding from King Saul? And he wasn't hiding because he was afraid of Saul, because as I mentioned in a previous video, King David, the young man, could have easily have whooped Saul. That wasn't why he was running. He was running because of the pain of the betrayal, because that relationship was broken and fractured forever. And according to the ancient literature, David was in hiding for 10 plus years, trying to sort out the pain. And now some might argue that they did reconcile at the end. I would argue that they did not reconcile. What happened was King Saul caught up with David 10 plus years later after David ran. And he was still after David's life. King Saul still wanted to destroy David. David finally cut off a piece of his robe and said, "Look, I was able to cut off your robe, Saul. If I wanted to hurt you, I would." In so many words, he's saying, "Leave me alone." Does that sound like a reconciliation to you? And as a result, Saul left David alone. Saul went out and lived his remaining years as a king, going off and fighting battles. But now watch this. Saul and his sons with him and his armies, they were all destroyed in the battles after that. And that is what led into David becoming the king. See, David didn't have to take the king out. David didn't have to take Saul out. All David did was withdraw from Saul's life. And Saul lost his best warrior. Saul lost the very one that took out the giant for him. And Saul marched into battle and he got destroyed, him and his sons. He lost his best warrior. He broke that relationship forever. So there was no reconciliation. They never came back together. David never rejoined Saul for battle ever again. That relationship was forever changed when that evil entity of narcissism went into Saul. And it's interesting that in the ancient literature of the Bible, it does say that narcissism, that eruption of anger, was an evil entity that entered into Saul. So yes, narcissism is evil. And don't get it out of your mind that there can be a reconciliation and somehow you can have a relationship like that again. You never will. I don't anticipate in my own experience to have a relationship with the abusive narcissist I've dealt with in any capacity of what could have been had they not erupted in their narcissistic rage of anger and hate. Whatever possibility of a relationship existed then will never happen again. Even if there is a reconciliation, there will never be a joining together again like there once was. It's over. And you've got to get this in your heart and in your mind. You cannot go back to that, even if there's a reconciliation. But it could take 10 years just to get to the point of some kind of a reconciliation. And now, why does it take so long? Because there's a lot of processing you need to do. You now need to understand the possibility and the risk of betrayal from people who tell you that they love you, from family members, from coworkers, from spouses, from children, if from anyone. You need to understand this risk. You need to have better boundaries. You have to have a better discernment. You have to have this strengthening in you, which comes from the processing. The years of no contact is processing and transforming your life. I'm going to share another biblical story with you. How many of you have heard of Joseph out of the ancient literature of the Bible? Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? Some of you have heard of that. Joseph was in a similar situation as David. When Joseph was just a young boy, he had dreams and visions of being great. He was a free-spirited individual that knew that he was going to be destined for great things, just like you, just like me. We're free-spirited people who love to do things, right? As a result of that, his brothers teamed up against him in a narcissistic fit of rage. Who do you think you are, young Joseph? And they threw him in a pit out of their own envy, out of their own hatred, out of their own narcissism, and they left him to be destroyed. And then they sold him into slavery. And then they lied, they made up a lie to tell their dad that his young son Joseph was eaten by an animal. How sick and twisted the mindset, how evil narcissism actually is. This is the mindset of narcissism. Let's get rid of somebody and then let's lie about it. That is narcissism. That is narcissistic abuse. That is the horror of humanity right there. Now, as a result, Joseph was sold into slavery. And then other things transpired when he was in slavery and he ended up being locked up for 14 years of no contact and no even acknowledgement, or didn't even know anymore anything about his family or his father or his brothers. He was separated from them for 14 plus years. No reconciliation, no answers as to why his brothers were filled with that narcissistic rage. It took 14 years for Joseph to get to this place where he was calm and didn't want to seek revenge, but settled into a new life. And for those of you who know the story, Joseph ended up the second in command in Egypt under the Pharaoh. And now, there came a point in time where there was a great famine over all the land, and Joseph's brothers, who were also grown, they were starving for food, and they made their way to Egypt. And guess who they came face to face with? That's right, the second in command, Joseph. Now, out of the compassion of Joseph's heart, much like David, who didn't kill Saul, Joseph also did not turn his brothers away. He gave them what they needed, which was food and sustenance. And people, again, can look at that as a reconciliation, but I would argue that it wasn't. Joseph allowed them to come in. He fed them. But that relationship of being close, of being what they once were as children, of being able to play together and hunt together, were different. Joseph was now a new man in a new life. He was now an Egyptian. He was now married to an Egyptian woman, and he now had an Egyptian family. And the life that he once had with his brothers was forever gone. So the reason I'm telling you this is to get you to understand. Stop taking into consideration the possibility of reuniting with narcissistic people who have hurt you and have forever changed the dynamic of the relationship. There is no going back to that. Let that life go. Let the life that you had with the narcissist die during your period of no contact. Work on your healing. Work on discovering, understanding, and compassion, and not the anger. Because again, the anger towards narcissist is also keeping you trapped from moving forward. But this period of no contact and separation is the time where you're processing that. You're understanding the betrayal. It's going to take a long time. For those of you who think that you've been going no contact for 6 months or a year and that's been long enough, you should be over it, you should be healing, and you should be able to say hi to them. Again, for me, it's been 5 years. For King David, he was away from Saul for 10 to 13 years. For Joseph, who was rejected and betrayed by his own brothers, he was away from that whole family for 14 plus years. The healing from the betrayal of narcissistic abuse takes a very long time, and then there is no going back to what the relationship could have ever been. It's not possible. It never was, and it never will be. Listen, I want to be a part of your healing journey. Scroll on down below where you can schedule some one-on-one time with me. We could have a telephone call. We could have a FaceTime consultation. You can even request a sponsored video, which will allow me to speak into your situation in a video format, which would also allow the Royal We viewers to speak into your situation as well. Also down below, you'll find links to Royal We Apparel, a brand new clothing store where you can pick up Royal We merchandise like this shirt right here and many others. And you can purchase a shirt and support your favorite channel. Also, Monday nights is Royal We Live Chat, where the community comes together. It's an opportunity to ask questions, answer questions, and you can even call in for free and talk about what's going on in your life. Saturday mornings is Royal We Fellowship at 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. This is an in-depth reading of the ancient scriptures, and it's applied to our understanding of narcissistic abuse in this world. And I'll be back with more videos for you right here on the Royal We.